And good morning. I think I know a lot of you, maybe most of you, but for those of you that I don't know, my name is John Sullivan, and I'm the chair of our U.S. real estate practice and the co-chair of our global real estate practice at DLA. And on behalf of our 500-plus real estate lawyers from around the world, including Rich Clowerter and Jackie Park, who are the vice chairs of our U.S. real estate practice, and Jay Epstein, who's the co-chair of our global real estate sector, it's my absolute pleasure to welcome you here to the 15th DLA Piper Global Real Estate Summit. I want to acknowledge and welcome the DLA real estate partners who have joined us from the UK, France, Germany, Luxembourg, Australia, Israel, Canada, and China. And they include Antoine Mercier from Paris, who's my co-chair of our global real estate practice, Sushila Rivers from Hong Kong, who's the co-chair of our global real estate sector and the head of our Asia-Pac real estate group, William Naughton from London, who heads real estate in the UK for us, and Mark Schmidt from Vancouver, who's the head of real estate in Canada for us. Someone whose opinion I value told me years ago that at its most fundamental level, life's really about relationships. And in my life, I've come to believe that that's true. True both generally and true with respect to business. Many of you in this room have been friends and clients of us for years, for some of you decades, and for some of you multiple decades. So I just want to let you know that we at DLA value those relationships tremendously and are extremely grateful for them. When we last got together in this room, it was in 2017, and I observed that our industry was grappling with a number of what were then unforeseen events, or at least largely unforeseen, the election of President Trump, the outcome of the Brexit votes, the tensions with North Korea. And I don't know about you, but back then I was thinking to myself in the back of my mind, well, things are probably going to settle down. Well, boy, was I wrong. So we all know that at a macroeconomic and geopolitical level, there's some challenges, there are uncertainties, you know what they are, trade disputes and tariffs, the Brexit saga, tensions with Iran, political unrest both at home and abroad, angst about where we are in the current market cycle, an angst that is reinforced, at least for some, by the inversion of the yield curve, questions about the upcoming presidential elections and its impacts, both on the economy and on politics generally. On the other hand, right, we look around the real estate industry in the US, and for most property types in most markets, the fundamentals look good. Leverage on a historic basis is relatively low. Consumer confidence remains near cyclical highs, and at 3.7% as reported in July, unemployment remains low. And despite some sell-offs this year and some hype and a pullback from China, the US remains a safe haven for global capital. At our prior summit, I said that we seem to be living in what Thomas Friedman called the age of accelerations. That is a time when innovation, change, and disruption are happening at an exponential pace. Well, the pace of that change, innovation, and disruption, I would submit, has only increased since we last met. And so I think that in light of this, it's appropriate that our theme this year is around evolution, revolution in the commercial real estate industry, and how our industry is transforming or needs to transform to face the future. So one of the things we're doing this year, for the first time, we're going to hold RE Live Talks. These are going to be short, powerful talks held by leading futurists who will share their insights on how things like mobility, prop tech, and health and wellness are going to shape the future of how and where we all live, work, and play. So be sure to stick around for those events. They're going to be interesting and they're going to be fun. During our lunch panel, we're going to get to hear from Secretary William Cohn, former U.S. Secretary of Defense, Ambassador Nicholas Burns, former U.S. Ambassador to NATO and Greece, and currently Professor of Diplomacy and International Relations at the Harvard Kennedy School, and Senator Bob Corker, former senator from Tennessee and chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. And it's just simply hard to imagine that you could have a group that would be better positioned to provide us with perspective and thought leadership on US and geopolitical events than that panel, so you won't want to miss that one either. To help set the stage for today's program, we're releasing today our Real Estate State of the Market survey. So if you don't have one, you can grab a printed copy while you're here today. This survey sheds light on how real estate industry leaders, all of you in this room and your peers, view the current state of the market and its attendant risks and opportunities. I urge you to read the entire survey. I'll give you just a few highlights. In terms of overall sentiment, about 74% of the respondents reported being bullish for the upcoming 12 months, although for the vast majority of those who were bullish, they were just slightly bullish. An overwhelming number of the respondents identified e-commerce and everything driven by it, like its effects on logistics and retailing, as the force most likely to be impactful on commercial real estate in the upcoming 12 months. Nearly 6 in 10 of our respondents predict that logistics and warehousing, apropos of my prior comment, will present the most attractive opportunity for investment in the upcoming 12 months. Other asset classes that scored high were urban transit-oriented, mixed-use development, and multifamily. 41% of our respondents said they expect that foreign investment in U.S. real estate will remain strong for the upcoming 12 months, with most of the money predicted to be coming from our friends in Canada. Again, there's a lot more data in the survey itself, so I urge you to take a look at it. When I was thinking about the challenge of figuring out where we are in the market today and where we might be headed, I called to mind an old saying. It's variously attributed to the Danish physicist Niels Bohr. It's sometimes attributed to Mark Twain and sometimes even to Yogi Berra. And the expression is, it's hard to make predictions, especially about the future. But you know, for better or for worse, you're all at some level in the business of making predictions about the future. And so we at DLA hope that by assembling this group of leading industry executives and thought leaders, and by focusing on innovation and evolution in our industry and trying to figure out where our industry is heading and where it needs to head, we will maybe in some small way help you to make better and more informed predictions about the future and to find ways to capitalize on opportunities in this age of disruption and acceleration. So I'm sure you can all appreciate that putting on an event of this magnitude requires a lot of work from a lot of people. I want to take just a moment to thank some of them, and I'll ask you at the end to join me in a round of applause. First, our 2019 Summit Planning Committee. My partners, Michael Hamilton from Los Angeles, Paul Shadle from Chicago, and Barbara Trachtenberg from Boston, all of whom, in addition to their day jobs, which in all honesty, they don't have day jobs, they have day and night jobs, and in addition to those jobs, spent countless hours planning this event. Our global real estate co-chair, my predecessor as leader of the real estate group, and the visionary behind these DLA real estate summits, Jay Epstein. And last but not least, our superstar event planner, Joy Carlson, and her superb team. So please join me in a round of applause for all those folks. Okay, now before we get started, just a couple of brief announcements. If you haven't done so already, please silence your phone and anything else that might make noise during the presentations. So thank you very much for doing that. When our opening speaker finishes, please stay in this room because the next event is a panel that's going to take place in this room, so you can stay right here. And then finally, please be sure to follow us on Twitter and to tweet about the summit. The address and the hashtags are found in your materials, and they should be on the screens. Okay, let's get to our opening speaker, Steve Weikal. Steve is the head of industry relations at the MIT Center for Real Estate. He's also the founder of MIT Disruption, a conference series that covers the impact of emerging technologies on real estate. Steve's research focuses on new, innovative technologies that are disrupting the ways in which real estate is developed, managed, and transacted. Steve's a licensed attorney, so don't hold that against him, though. He's also a licensed real estate broker and a LEED accredited professional. He's a member of the CRE Tech Leadership Board, and he sits on the advisory board of multiple real estate technology startups. Steve's going to talk to us about real estate fracking, human stickiness, and getting smarter. So in this age of accelerations, technology, disruption, and innovation, in this age of accelerations, I can't think of anybody better to kick off our 2019 summit than Steve Weikal, so please join me in welcoming Steve to the stage.
Very much appreciate being here. Thank you, John. I'd also like to say thank you to Jay and Skylar and Joy. I enjoyed the conversations as we were discussing how to talk about this topic. It's a really, really big topic, so we'll have to narrow it down a little. I should mention that when I was in school at MIT and learned about the DLA, read about the DLA Summit, I thought, I hope that my career unfolds in such a way that I might get an invitation to attend. And so it's remarkable that now I'm here kicking it off this morning, and it's truly an honor, so thank you. The MIT Center for Real Estate, for those of you who don't know, is a research group at the Institute. It was founded in 1984 by some leading real estate folks in the business. Hank Spalding was a founder, later became JLL. Gerald Hines was there, three guys named Aldrich, Eastman, and Walsh, later became AEW. So there's some great history, great DNA there at the center. It was founded for two reasons. One, to raise the level of education in the industry, because in the 80s, as the finance industry was deregulating, our industry was trying to keep up, and so they felt that it was important to raise the quality of the talent that was coming into the industry. So we award a master's degree in real estate development. We have about 1,200 alums globally, 30% of them outside of the US, represented in 48 different countries. So that's a fantastic network throughout the global real estate industry. And that's helpful to us for the other part, which is the research part that we do. We've got about 25 full-time faculty and researchers at various levels located around the world, but most of them on campus. And that allows us to really dive into what's happening in our industry and lately understand these fundamental changes that are happening. And we do that through three subgroups. We call them labs. There are three study groups. One is called the China Future City Lab, which focuses primarily on China and the explosive growth that's going on there. There's the Real Estate Innovation Lab, which is the group that I'm involved with, and then also the Price Dynamics platform led by Dr. David Geltner to really do complex asset pricing, which is a separate conversation. I'm going to share a little bit about what we're doing, the work we're doing in the Real Estate Innovation Lab, and observing this disruption that's happening. And I'll do it in a couple of different ways. Oh, I should mention, and also thank all of our corporate partners, because the question is, how are we able to do this? Well, we get support from the Institute, but we also get support from 25 or 30 really key industry supporters that help us do what we do, and I know a number of them are represented here, so I'll say thank you at this point. So what are the recent trends? It was a challenge, right? We had lots of different things to talk about, and normally I have a whole term to talk about these topics. So we had to narrow it down to some of the big trends that I think are most relevant right now, and also would provide the stepping off point for the next panels, because we have some great panels that are going to be talking about these topics in more depth. But let me share with you what we'll cover. We're going to talk about the startup tsunami. A lot of people know about this huge prop tech category that's come on the scene. We've been dissecting that a little bit to understand what that is. Also, real estate fracking. As John mentioned, I'll explain why we refer to it as that and what it is. Also, the UI and the UX of real estate. Those of you who come from the tech business, the UI, the user interface, it's also been referred to as the user experience of real estate. It's really becoming less and less about the building and more about the people, which might be a good thing. We'll talk about that. Then also that real estate is getting smarter, and there are a number of aspects of the smartness that's starting to show up related to technology. So first, we'll talk about the startup tsunami. In 2014, when we did our first conference on real estate tech, and we were calling it RE-Tech, it wasn't really called prop tech then, but that seems to be the familiar name. We call it CRE-Tech because the center focuses on the commercial real estate side. But when we first did this conference, I had about 12 interesting startups to have on a panel to choose from, 12. And it was pretty great. It was some of the ones that have been around a long time and become friends. Michael Mandel from Comstack, Nick Ramito from VTS. They were all very helpful, and they loved coming up to MIT and having this conversation. By 2019, the latest database I saw was over 7,000 startups. That's a global number. Our database that we work with on a day-to-day basis is about 3,500. But you can see this is the ridiculous growth in that amount of time to have all of these startups taking a look at our industry and looking for opportunities to reinvent what we do. So that as a background, the startup tsunami, there was also this, this perfect storm that is in part, due in part to the unprecedented breakthroughs in technology. We've got cloud computing, leaner and faster coding, mobile devices, smart and cheap sensors, AI and machine learning. We'll talk about some of those. And recognizing that there's more technology in this than there was in the first Apollo program. So we've got this at our fingertips. This is a remarkable transition just from a technology standpoint. Also, ubiquitous connectivity, broadband, 3G, 4G, 5G. I was just reading about 6G. I don't quite understand what 6G is, but we'll talk a little bit about 5G and why that matters. An increasingly tech-savvy mobile workforce. I don't have to tell you this. And really, the data is showing it's not just millennials. There's also the Z generation, the first digital natives. Most of us are digital immigrants. We come to data and technology as immigrants, as outsiders. But the Z generation, almost the same size as the millennials, will have a dominant impact because they are digital natives. They grew up, it's the air they breathe. So that's going to make a difference. And then I'll just mention the continued impact of on-demand and the sharing economy that shows up in the DLA survey, that this is a very, very important, that those of you who took that feel that that's going to have an important impact on the industry. You can read more about that in the report. And then lots of funding. So these are some of the reasons that we're behind this tsunami. And what do I mean by lots of funding? I was having an earlier conversation about this. Little hard to read, but the bar, the little tiny bar all the way on the left, 2012, a little less than $1 billion went into prop tech or real estate tech broadly, and that might include Airbnb, that might include the WeWorks of the world. But notice the second to last bar, the big tall one, the one that goes up over 18 billion, that was last year. So we've gone from less than $1 billion to 18 billion in about 6 years. And even if you back out the SoftBank crazy money for $2 or $3 billion, if you back that out, you've still got a lot. You're at 12, 13, 14, 15 billion. And that green bar on the right was the first quarter of 2019, which is pushing 6 billion. So this is an immense amount of money going into, VC money, going into this specific category of real estate tech. Construction tech, similar, that was about $1.5 billion last year. We're also seeing some convergence. If you look at the Venn diagram when we first started on this, you could look specifically at real estate tech. Well, now it overlaps with legal tech. I don't have to tell you that. It overlaps with hospitality tech, construction tech, fintech. There's a lot of convergence and swirl going on. But this is the general picture on what's happening with VC. So where's this VC coming? Now that's kind of interesting. Where's the VC coming from? You may have heard of a company called Fifth Wall, just did a roughly $500 million fundraise, all deployed into real estate tech. They are funded by their partners, Hines, Equity Residential, CBRE, Prologis, Lennar, Macerich. Navitas did another big one recently, JLL, Equity, Divco. Equity's getting in on both apparently. Then there's an interesting category, Camber Creek, and you'll hear from Camber Creek later. Camber Creek, Coragen, Tamarisk, Zig. These are investment funds that have their history with big real estate families. A little different from Fifth Wall and Navitas, which are more conventional funds. These are people that own big portfolios of real estate who recognize that the technology is impacting their business and they need to get in on it and kind of get ahead of the disruption. Then there are a few that we're starting to see some specialty groups. RETV is all residential, VC, $100 million residential, all for the residential category. Simon, retail, Westfield, retail, brick and mortar, that's construction tech. And some of the big players have their own in-house funds. So now you can go to a fund, you can do some direct investment, or you can have your in-house investment fund. Brookfield Ventures, PLD, which is Prologis, Cemex, and JLL Spark. And lastly, there are the accelerator programs that also have funds. You'll hear from Zach from Metaprop later on. They've launched a fund, a big one, Colliers, Techstars, and Plug and Play. So the point of this is that it's coming from a very interesting part of the industry. These are people who understand real estate and they understand that the industry is getting reinvented. So that's the VC, that's the number of firms. And Brad Greiwe from Fifth Wall has this great quote. He says, VCs are funding the R&D for the real estate industry. We've never had R&D for our industry. We don't have a skunk works the way technology did, or the way the auto business did, or the drug business, or any of them, software, hardware. Now this is our version of R&D. And so it will have a tremendous impact as it starts being spread and shared throughout the industry. Okay, so that's the background, all these cool companies, and we study technology and we study the companies. I happen to like the companies. I love meeting with founders. I get emails and calls all the time. Got a new idea, and sometimes I've heard it 20 times. Sometimes it's different, interesting. So we like to talk to them and understand how that ecosystem works. So let me talk about fracking. And this is happening at the same time, or as a result of. My colleague Dennis Frenchman says that fracking is using technology to break real estate, either the use of real estate or the actual physical asset, breaking it apart into smaller pieces and reconfiguring it into higher value combinations, unlocking the stranded value. So this is like oil and gas fracking, where we pump steam and water and bad chemicals into the ground, break up the shale, bring out the oil. So what can we do with real estate? What does that look like in real estate? Well, there are a couple of great prime examples: WeWork and Airbnb. We've all read about WeWork. It's been in the news. We won't talk about that. But WeWork, the largest, not occupier, but largest tenant, lease-paying tenant in New York City, non-governmental, and also the largest tenant in London, and by a bunch of other metrics, really, really big. They, as you probably know, they lease low and license high and play the spread. They have other sources of profit or not. But the gist here is that they were taking. I'm not going to go in that direction. So the point is, they're taking the real estate and they're breaking it up and they're optimizing it, and then they're getting higher capacity and higher optimization and higher utilization, and probably making it very difficult on the property managers. But nonetheless, they're profiting from that. Airbnb, hotels, the largest hotel company in the world that doesn't own a bed. And it started as, hey, I've got an extra bedroom, can I rent that out to somebody who's passing through town and make a couple of bucks? So this is this fracking idea. So keep this in mind. I'm going to talk a little bit about co-working just because it's no longer a fad, just in case you still thought it was a fad. It's not. It's here. It's here. So the transition from 2010 to 2017, this was some research that was done. Hard to read, but the top bar, the light blue, shows the gig portion of the pie. Total users from 2010 to 2017. The top blue bar, the dark bar right below it shows what happened in 7-8 years. Half of the total pie is gig workers. The bottom bars, you can see a tiny little blue one. Those were companies larger than 100 employees. The dark blue, the very bottom dark blue bar, a 6-fold increase in 8 years of companies larger than 100. So what's my point? My point is that the enterprise solution of co-working has caught on, and companies really like this. Occupiers really like this flexible space, and so it's not going to go away. And in fact, in the WeWork, in the offering documents, they point out that almost 40% of their business is from companies that have more than 500 employees. Wow. That means that your big clients, occupier clients, they're all using it in some form or another. So this is an impact. It's happening. Google says that flexible will be the defining characteristic of the future of the workplace. Now, we know that Google is kind of a rarefied place, but nonetheless, I think what they're saying is important to recognize. I have another example. There's a company called Github. Anybody heard of Github? Do you use it? It's coders, and it's a pretty famous company in coding circles. GitHub has a little more than 600 employees in 54 countries right now. They just got a big slug of VC. They expect to have 1,000 employees in even more than 54 countries by the year end. They have no central offices. It's my understanding, they have no big occupier leases. It's all flexible. It's sort of virtual, but they still work in places, but chances are they're working in co-working. So just to keep it in mind, that might be an extreme case, but just to keep it in mind about how some of these trends are heading. But it's not all WeWork, thank goodness. So there's Industrious, there's Knotel, there's Regus. Everybody's heard of Regus, right? It's been around 30 years. It's been through a couple of restructurings. They actually own 5 times the real estate, or control 5 times the real estate as WeWork. It's just that WeWork was the hip version of Regus. But Regus has been around. Ucommune, company from China. Anybody heard of Ucommune? They just deployed $200 million in the US to do co-working in the US. So, and there are a bunch of other companies. I'll share a few of them. So the developers have recognized that this is an issue. They need to maybe get involved. So now they've launched Studio from Tishman Speyer, Flex from Boston Properties, Hoist from Mirvac in Australia. Hines just launched their version. So now the developers are getting in on it. And if you need help doing it, if you're not quite big enough as one of those big developers and you need help setting up your own co-working, the brokerages have stepped in, Hana from CBRE and Saville's Pilot. So this continues to evolve, and it continues to evolve and will continue to have an impact. JLL, some of the data is saying that JLL says 5% of the current US office inventory is controlled by flexible space. Now that may be more, it depends on how they define it. It may not just be co-working, but 5% is pretty big. But by 2030, it could be 30%. Could be big. However, there are some clouds on the horizon. Instant Group, which really follows this space, they say that average desk prices fell by 5% in the 18 largest cities in 2018. So desk prices are coming down. China's had a bunch of failures. 30, 40 companies have shut down, partly because of overexpansion. So I think it's important to just recognize that there will be some pain, some growing pains along the way. But what about, those are mostly office solutions, but check this out. These are really neat. Biolabs is co-working for biospace. You come out of MIT with a new molecule or something and you can't stay on campus. Where do you go? You can't go to a WeWork. You need to go to where there's wet lab and dry lab. You go to Biolabs. Cybertech for cybersecurity. The Food Loft for food development in Boston. Restore retail. Hera Club and The Wing co-working. Only women founders are allowed to join there. So that's an interesting model. Paragon and WeGrow. Anybody been to a Paragon or a WeGrow? Anybody, have you been there? Co-working for cannabis. This didn't look like a Paragon kind of a group. I didn't think so. Didn't think so. Saltbox just got some funding. This is combination co-working and co-warehousing. Metaprop is involved with this one. So now you see this convergence of different co-workings and different kinds of companies. Big Oakland Tradecraft Factory. Factory does food, beverage, and pet health. Co-working and distribution and fulfillment. So we're starting to see these specialized solutions to help primarily startups, but not always, because you can imagine at a place, in fact, the factory was started by some guys that made a bunch of money in big pet retail and decided they needed to nurture small companies. So these are exciting and interesting. I mentioned this convergence, this co-working convergence. You may have read that Industrious is opening up co-working in Mesa Ridge Malls and Mesa Ridge Mall, the Fashion Square Mall in Scottsdale, and then at the Taubman Mall in Short Hills. So now you're going to have co-working in retail. That's an interesting symbiotic relationship. But then they're also opening an Equinox. So now you work out, you co-work, and you hang out, and so is this the new office? Maybe, for some people. Another version, Work Bars and Staples. Anybody heard of Work Bar from New England? Work Bar is a neat one. They're a regional. Bill Jacobson started them. And they're interesting because they're suburban. A lot of these are urban. They are suburban. So they did this trial with Staples. What does Staples have a lot of? Empty space. They have a lot of empty space, unfortunately, because they're getting Amazoned. So they thought, well, what if we can take this space? We've got a big box, a big building. Can we put co-working in there? Because actually, that suburban co-working user aligns with who their clients, their customers are. So they did these 3 trials, very successful. And what do? They are doing their own thing called Staples Studio. They're rolling out in all Staples stores, many Staples stores around the country. So this is like a double frac. This is a double frac. You got the office fracking going on inside the retail fracking. And then in Europe, this Nextdoor and Accor hotels, they're doing co-working in hotels. You may have read some of the work done on what's the future of hotel and hospitality. Will it be entertainment? It might be office during the day. You'll still have rooms upstairs. So that's happening. And then the last one that's an interesting example, Lifetime Fitness has Lifetime Health already. They're doing these health services in fitness, and now they've announced Lifetime Work, so which is co-working. So this is the convergence that's going on and will continue to go on between different product types. Let me get away from the kind of co-working, because I think we've explored a lot of that, and look at real estate fracking that happens in other versions and variations. Liquid space. You can book empty meeting rooms and boardrooms in somebody's office who doesn't know you. And you book it on your phone, like Zipcar, like car sharing, and you arrive and you've sent it to all of your colleagues, and everybody gathers there, you meet for 2 hours, you pay the $50, and you're out. Meeting rooms. Share desks, same thing for a bunch of desks. You've got half of a floor that's all empty and unoccupied, either expansion space or downsizing space. You can now book that out to work groups on the phone for a week, an hour, a month. That's share desk. Convene does the same thing for services, for conference and meeting services, food and beverage. This is all kind of everything as a service. Appear here, these are retail solutions, anybody involved in retail. Appear here is pop-up. Beta is a store within a store, curated store within a store. That's an interesting solution because we know retail is struggling. Spacious is an MIT startup. They're looking at using vacant storefronts for combination gallery, retail, co-working space. And then co-living is also coming on the scene. Ollie, Common, Star City, getting some traction in the US. Watch how that works, because that's a different model. Sometimes they do it in partnership with traditional multifamily developers. But this co-living arrangement, small rooms, high amenitized. We remember it in Boston, they still call it SROs, right? SROs, and the washroom is still at the end of the hall in some places in the North End. So this is the much more modern version of that. Some of them call them adult dormitories, but that's okay. Then there's some other hotel, there's a hotel solution called Y Hotel. They pop up in apartment buildings that are going through lease up. This is interesting. These are some guys from Vornado saw, well, how could we monetize all these empty apartments when we're leasing up? Well, do a pop-up hotel. And then you leave when the thing's fully leased so you don't have the neighborhood pushback. So other ideas, then there are a whole bunch of them in the warehouse and distribution network as well. The Common Sense Robotics is interesting. They do pop-up last mile distribution. They just opened up a distribution facility in an unused level of a parking garage in Tel Aviv to help with the last mile, because Amazon needs to deliver, but they don't know where to put the stuff. So again, this is this idea of fracking. The last example, day use and recharge. Anybody use day use or recharge? Recharges in New York. Hotel rooms by the hour. Come on, the joke writes itself. Help me here. No, so yeah, aside from the, all kidding aside, but just imagine how often this building sits empty and underutilized for the 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Is there a way to monetize that for somebody who needs to take their shoes off, answer email, have a meeting, for a variety of reasons? And this is not just a joke, because they've got some Hyatts and some Westons, some W's. I think maybe the Pierre has a program with one of them. So this is a legitimate thing, aside from the joking. It's a legitimate thing. But this is this fracking idea, looking at the asset, where can we make money where we've never made money before? Mark Grinnis from EY has a great cut on this. Commercial real estate is no longer a fixed asset, it's fluid. It's fluid. And so the key word is optimization. And there's also a key word called stickiness, which we're going to get to as well, because now that it becomes fluid and this new workforce doesn't make long-term commitments, and they want everything now, and they want just what they want, and they'll only pay for what they use, that is not exactly aligning with our industry, where we're used to 10-year leases with 2 5-year renewals and long-term commitments. So, and of course, obviously that impacts everything. It impacts underwriting, it impacts what we build and where we build and how we build it. So, so I think that's an important concept. So let me talk about the UI and the UX of real estate. My friend Chase Garbarino from one of these startups says technology is causing a huge shift in value from the physical assets to the user experience. Now there's a much greater focus on the user experience and the value in the user experience. So there are a bunch of startups in this category. Many of them, some of these may look familiar to you. Chase is at HQO. Equium, an Australia company that relocated here. Workwell, a UK company that relocated here. Lane, a Canadian company that just signed a big deal with Brookfield. Interesting trend, lots of non-US companies locating to the US, no surprise. Zoe is Tishman Speyer's proprietary. Modo does college campuses. And let's not forget aside from the big business model that everybody talks about, WeWork, has all of this. Imagine the kind of volume and traffic they have, and they're getting data on all of that behavior about how people work and how to configure space and how to optimize and how to monetize. So that may actually be worth more in the future in a company like that than just the renting of the office space. And I should also mention, I just heard somebody say, they said, you know, this new workforce, and by the way, this is not disease in the millennials, it's I'm loving all of this stuff. And I'm an X, so, but everybody wants this WeWork experience. They want the WeWork amenities and the WeWork, so it's raising the bar on developers and owners. There's another group that does this more through hardware, and so these are the passive versions, Refinity, Spacity, VergeSense, Beco. They're using either beacons or they're tracking the Wi-Fi. You and I don't know what's going on. The other ones, we're interacting. We're doing access, we're ordering lunch, we're looking for pet services, dry cleaning. So they know what we're doing because we're interacting with the app and with the building management. These are passive. It happens when we walk into the building. And the legacy providers, the Schneiders and the Siemens and Honeywells, are also working on this stuff as well. So that's the passive version. And then there are a whole bunch of residential versions. Imagine if we could engage apartment renters in a better way so that they love where they live and they love the brand, and then they won't just shop on price and location. So these are ways that companies are using to engage. Cozy was just acquired by CoStar, and Zego was acquired by Payless, so there's starting to be some consolidation in the industry. So that's the UI and the UX of real estate. My friend Chris Kelly puts it perfectly. What talent wants, landlords need, developers must build. Very different from when I started in the development business. Usually the tenant was a thought later. This is very different. What talent wants determines what we build. And we now can gather the data to understand what the talent wants. But the stickiness is critical. Now that they're mobile and they've got all this information, we need to understand them to make sure that they stay around, because they can easily jump, especially as leases turn into licenses and we've got everything on demand. That can be a real challenge to our business models. Okay, so real estate is getting smarter. This leads into the real estate is getting smarter because we're gathering all of that data from those various apps. We've got the building is a computer with a roof. It's generating immense amount of data while we're just sitting here. And then the people who are coming and going, we're capturing that. And then the people who are interacting with us, we're gathering immense amounts of data there. IBM tells us that 90% of the data in the world today has been created in the last 2 years alone. 90%. That's really something. Oh, and by the way, it's doubling in size every 2 years. It's an immense amount of data. Remember when big data was a thing? Big data was a thing. And now suddenly we got plenty of data. We deal with this every day in our research. We've got plenty of data. The challenge is it clean? Is it consistent? Interoperability? Is it current? There are other issues. So we've got plenty of data. Just to give you an idea, this is cell phone data alone, just smartphones. From 2014 to 2020. In 2014, there were 2.7 billion of these globally. By 2020, there will be 6.1 billion of them globally, all spitting out data. So a double. But the one on the far, check out the graphic on the far right. That's the total amount of smartphone traffic and data. 2.1 exabytes in 2014, 17 exabytes. A 9-fold increase by 2020. I don't know what an exabyte is exactly, but I know it's really big. It's really big. So that's a lot of data. Let's talk about just about the 4G, 3G, 4G, 5G, just to give you a perspective on this. 3G, 26 hours to download a 2-hour movie to your phone. That's 3G. 4G, so it's 26 hours. 4G takes 6 minutes to download that film. 5G, 3.6 seconds. 3.6 seconds. So what does that mean? So we had all that data. The problem was we didn't have one challenge is the pipe isn't big enough. So the challenge with, say, autonomous vehicles, I noticed that was in the survey as well. Autonomous vehicles, latency, as we know, is kind of important with autonomous vehicles. They need to be able to respond to what's going on around them, but if you're trying to run it off of a 4G network, that's going to be a problem. Imagine what happens. I just spoke yesterday to a group. They're all controls people. That's Johnson Controls, Siemens, Honeywell. So they're talking about 5G. Imagine what happens to our building, all of the cool things that we can now do in buildings when we get this much bigger pipe. The buildings become even more responsive and dynamic and exciting, really. So that's the 5G story. We did research. Oh, so now we have all this data. How do you process it? That's where the AI and machine learning and neural networks start coming in. So AI's been around a long time. 40 years probably. Machine learning, really, when you see the headline with AI, we're really interested in the machine learning, which is the new. The unfixed algorithms, the ones that dynamically change, the ones that scour immense amounts of data that we can't humanly do on our own. So we took a look at that database of prop tech companies and identified about 130 companies that are using some version of AI or machine, they're all using AI, but some version of machine learning. And so it was interesting. So they fall into some different categories. And this is somewhat arbitrary, but I just wanted to share it with you. Locational analysis, a company called Cardo, which is based in Spain and the US. They have 300,000 users. Locate AI does location decision making. Anybody had to do an office relocation or open in a new market before? Or had a client that's had to do that? You go to the consultants, you spend a lot of money, wait 6 months and get a big report. Now you can check the boxes, put the guidelines in, press a button, and it prioritizes what markets you should go to, and why, and where in the submarkets. So is this for real yet? We're on the cusp of it actually being, would you stake your career on it? Maybe not yet. But this is the kind of stuff they're working on. Spatial is following social and Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and Flickr. They're not really using real estate data. They're using behavioral data to make decisions on real estate. Development analysis, so a company called Paraffin here in Chicago, Spacemaker in Europe, City Builder, they're doing development plans, highest and best use, push a button, and you get it. Check this out. These are 6 sites in Chicago. Paraffin is running the iterative prototyping on a hotel on all 6 of those sites. What you can't see is it's running key count, parking, budget, and cap rate automatically. And what it does is it gives you 1,000 iterations, and you go look at the top 3, because that's where the best opportunity is. Is it foolproof yet? Not quite yet. But is it better than working on a spreadsheet? Maybe. What turns 40 years old this year? The spreadsheet. We're running a multi-trillion-dollar global industry off of a 40-year-old technology. So it's time we're going to see some new solutions like this. Deal analysis, these companies may be familiar. CompStack, Cherry, Reonomy. Enodo's a multifamily solution. Cherry does portfolio optimization, automatic. Underwriting and appraisal, Bowery, so the appraisal business, there's a business that's been doing things the same way a long time. So they're going to get disrupted. So this is push-button appraisal. And GeoFi is a European company that's okay, take that to the next level, push-button underwriting. Put in how you want to deploy capital, press the button, tells you where to go and what to do. Are they actually doing it yet? Well, they're working on it. A lot of really smart people. And lastly, virtual assistants. This is neat. We've got Alexa and Siri for buying stuff, and our kids and our grandkids order stuff without us knowing about it because it happens automatically. But this is going to show up in business, and this is pretty cool. Have you seen an example of the Google Duplex? Have you seen this one? Okay, watch this.
So how can I help you?
Hi, I'm calling to book a women's haircut for a client. I'm looking for something on May 3rd.
Sure, give me 1 second.
Okay, the reason they're laughing is because the one on the left is a machine.
At 12 p.m.
We do not have a 12 p.m. available. The closest we have to that is a 1:15.
Do you have anything between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m.?
Depending on what service she would like. What service is she looking for?
Just a woman's haircut for now.
Okay, we have a 10 o'clock.
10 a.m. is fine.
Okay, what's her first name?
The first name is Lisa.
Okay, so you can see this interaction that goes on, and it's kind of charming and interesting. I saw a demonstration on booking flights where somebody had to change a complex flight arrangement that was done with a chatbot. Let me show you what this could look like in our industry.
Hey, Tool.
Hey, Sergey. What can I help you?
4th floor, room number 2, Anderson Construction. Head joint thickness is over 20 millimeters. Added to issue list.
Issue added. Do you want to take a picture of this defect?
Yes.
Interface opened. Picture added.
Okay, now we're seeing the convergence of technology. We've got the voice interaction, we've got the machine vision, we've got the camera, we've got the digital assistant. This is a company called i2 in Germany. The product is called i2. It's a software company in Germany. And I'll just show you one other quick clip of
We need
this.
to repaint ceiling.
He's going
in
through
room number
punch.
3. Added to punch list for drywall twice. With due date April 26.
Done.
Actually, I want to talk with their project manager. Schedule a meeting for this Friday.
Is 1 p.m. or 2 p.m. okay for you?
Yes.
Schedule set and sent it to DrywallWise Project Manager.
Thank you, Mark 2.
Okay, that's pretty cool. So now it's the construction docs, it's the calendar, and they alert the guy that has to come to the meeting, all in an automated way. I suspect there's work also happening in the legal profession around this kind of activity. Now, we have other regulatory issues and privacy and security issues, but different, not other, but different ones. But this just gives you a sense, we take it from the hair appointment up to this kind of level. Think of the productivity changes and how our industry will change. So, some key takeaways. We talked about a lot of material. I hope this is a good place to start. We're going to hear more on many of these topics later today, and I'll be around if you have specific questions. Some key takeaways. So VC is industry R&D. That was one idea. Fracking optimizes and unlocks value. We've got this convergence, what I call neo-mixed use. There's mixed use, but it's a different kind of a mixed use than we used to have. The human interface and the importance of stickiness, and then that real estate is getting smarter. This can be a bit overwhelming. I agree, can be a bit overwhelming. So I always have to fall back to Bill Gates, who says we always overestimate the change that will occur in the next 2 years and underestimate the change that will occur in the next 10. So there will be these hypes. Remember when blockchain was the headline, right? And then big data was the headline, and then autonomous vehicles were the headline. We think it's going to change everything, and we better get moving. But it does calm down. But maybe 10 years later, we look back and we say, wow, we didn't know that was going to happen. And then another quote from our friend Elon Musk: "I would like to die on Mars, just not on impact." And that's a good point, because it will be messy. There will be mistakes made. Read the latest on WeWork. You know, we're going to have to sort this out. This happens in any disruptive environment, and that's what's going on. And the last thing I have is an example of that. You may have seen these cool Nightscope robots. And these are these little drones. They've got sensors and cameras, and they talk to people, and they patrol the parking lot or they patrol the building. They're pretty cool. They're pretty cool. But there's still some work to be done. There's still some work to be done and we're going to figure it out, though. We're going to figure it out, though, and it's a very exciting time. And with that, I'll say thank you for your time and attention. It was certainly my pleasure. Thank you. Yeah, so John, do we have time? I want to be sensitive to staying on schedule. Okay, because I don't want to answer to Joy if we get off schedule. Questions from the audience? We'll take a couple of questions. If you hold up your hand, we've got some mic runners. That way everybody can hear the question. We have one right here. Sorry for the pause. It's just so that everybody can hear the question, including me. Yes, sir.
Just out of curiosity.
Oh, excuse me. Can you say who you are and where you're from?
Yeah, I'm Mark Davidson, and I'm with AEW Capital Management.
Oh, great. Welcome.
Thank you. One question, just looking at what AEW is doing, you talked about how you either utilize fixed assets that are underutilized, or how someone else pays for your working capital that you don't need to pay. But you didn't talk about who's going to disrupt the need for fixed assets. You know, if we look at, we're using Microsoft Teams, we looked at Slack, you know, we can do a lot and have all in-person dialogues without being in person. Mm-hmm. So have you looked at the technology that's trying to disrupt the need for the fixed assets?
That's a great question about what does the future look like. A couple of thoughts on that. The first is check out Mark Gilbreath from Liquid Space doing his TED Talk online about have we reached peak office? Because what if we optimize all this space? What if we take the office from 30% occupancy or utilization to 90% utilization? Does that mean we've got a threefold overhang of office space? Well, it's a bit extreme because it needs to be updated and a lot of it's old, but check that out. So yes, could we optimize ourselves out of the need? Possibly. And then the other question that comes up is with augmented reality, virtual reality. Our research is inconclusive. MIT broadly is doing research all over campus on the future of work. We feel that innovation still needs to happen in a place. And as good as the technology gets, where you create this human connection through the technology, I think it's going to be a while. There's still this need for us to be together at some time, the human need to be together. So to your point about we'll have these remote groups, and we've heard the stories of IBM and Yahoo and the big companies bringing the remote workers back because they realized it was not productive. Was that a failure of technology, or was that a failure of the socialization of the structure? I don't know. But we think there will still need to be a place, but we may have a whole workforce of digital nomads that are at one time in the place and at the other time not in the place but connected electronically. Did that help? Okay, great. Do we have time for one more question, John? Yeah, one more? Great, there's a question down here. Thank you.
Hi, Steve Fifield, Fifield Companies. Katera and the 3D construction, do you track that? How are those types of innovations evolving?
So the question was about modular construction, a very hot category right now. Huge amounts of money. One example, Katera got close to $1 billion from SoftBank. They're making acquisitions. I think it's interesting that about every 10 years we revisit modular construction. And we always, every 10 years we think we're going to fix it this time. We're going to figure it out this time. I worked on a project myself where we tried 3 different ways to do it modular and just couldn't get there. So we're not following it specifically. My friend Christoph Reinhardt and also Larry Sass over in the Building Technology Group are following modular and other innovations going on in project delivery. So I think we'll get there. Not sure from my own personal experience, not sure where the margins get shaved, because it's not in the materials cost, it's actually in the time. One bit of research we have done on smart and green buildings was that the premium cost now in doing a green building is in the design stage. It's not in the hardware or the construction. It's in the changes in the design stage and the iterations that have to go on. And if we can automate that, then that'll mean that high-performing buildings are equal to non-high-performing buildings. So I suspect in the modular, whether it's high-rise office kind of modular or if it's residential kind of modular, I think most of it's right now in residential, I think that will get figured out. But it's not, in our observation, it's not in the material costs where you think you're going to save. It's in the time to delivery. Did that help? Glad to talk about it later, too. So, John.
You take another question.
Oh, take one more? Okay, take one more. Do we have one more out there? Maybe we solved all the problems today. We might have solved everything. I think we're good to go. And I'll be around as you think of more things. I'll be around today. So, John, thank you. I'll turn it over to you because I know you're going to introduce this next terrific panel that will pick up where we left off.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay. Thank you.